Hello everybody. Welcome to tonight's session of the Virtual Global Spine Conference. I'm incredibly honored to host Dr. Edward Oates from Flensburg, from the Diaco Hospital in Flensburg, in the most northern part of Germany as possible. He is an orthopedic surgeon, a trauma surgeon. And this is not a trauma surgeon, he is a passionate trauma surgeon and a great surgeon educator. And he is well known in the med Twitter community for his osteosynthesis presentations, fixing bones with I think especially the tibia shaft. I learned today is something he is really experiencing. And he is also expert for using artificial intelligence. This is not something he is able to talk about. He is also able to show his project to us, and we will discuss today how we can use AI in the literature, and we will have some controversies of spine surgery, and we will test what today's technology can give us and make literature search easier. Thank you very much that you take your time. It's midnight in Germany, it's midnight in Switzerland, and I see a lot of people joining in from all over the world. Please use the chat box to ask questions. I will moderate everything. I will ask Dr. Oates questions. Just feel free to ask everything you want. Otherwise, we will use AI to find your questions. Ed, may I ask you, can you start the presentation?
Yeah, sure. Look, I don't have a PowerPoint. Basically, I'm just going to talk and introduce basically what I've created, but not in the sense that I just want to show you the front end of it, but I want to get into the back end of how this works and show people what is AI and what is everyone talking about and what is it actually doing and what's all this stuff going on in the background? Because often I encounter rather skeptical feedback. I've invested a lot of time in this, and I've gotten to know how this process works. And a lot of people have a very reflexive skepticism, and a well-founded skepticism, but there's a lot going on with how a lot of this AI works. And I just want to get into that. And although my project, have a look at how it actually works, what are the processes that are going on in the background, and then that'll empower people to know or to have a feel for what is the value of the answer that this system then spits out. So getting to know the source is the key to getting to know the quality of your answers, basically. So just going back a bit. So first of all, yeah, my name's Dr. Oates, Ed Oates. I've met Alexander a couple of months ago in person. We met up in Switzerland. He was a fantastic bloke, and really appreciate being invited to come and talk on one of my favorite topics. As you said, I'm not a spinal surgeon. I'm not an idiot, but I'm not going to be completely au fait with a lot of the technical lingo. So if it looks like I'm a little bit slow, just treat me like a child and spell it out slowly, and I'll work my way through it. But look, let's just get into this AI business. I think a key thing to understand right at the get-go is to understand what is AI. So when people are talking about ChatGPT at the moment, I think ChatGPT is the benchmark and the prototype which everyone is referring to when they talk about AI. And what does it do, and how smart is it, and what does it know, and how good are the answers that it gives me, etc. The key to understanding this whole game is that AI doesn't know anything. All it is a pattern recognition software that has spent an awful lot of time looking at an awful lot of literature and looking at literal letters and combinations of letters and combinations and permutations of letters in context, both at a microscopic and macroscopic level, and has learnt the associations, basically like a barcode, a binary sequence of A's and E's and Z's and W's, and can manipulate when posed with a given sequence of words that for humans means a sentence and has an intrinsic meaning. It looks at it and says, all right, I've seen a variation or a permutation of this combination of letters before in my millions of pages of training material, and an estimated appropriate response to this combination of bits and bytes is this combination of bits and bytes. So you're not actually charging AI with a question. It's not understanding a question, and it's not producing an answer based on material that it's learned. Rather, you're giving it a pattern, and it's giving you its reflection of that pattern, which means if you ask it something, you can ask it a very sensible question. It'll give you a very sensible answer. But if you ask it to get into the details of that answer, it'll completely fall apart because you're looking for its recognition of knowledge and looking for its sources and looking for its the nuances, which would imply that it's understood what it's doing, but it has no idea. So it knows. You ask it a literature-based question, it knows, oh, this is a literature-based question, and this would normally be followed by a reference with a date and a volume number and a bunch of pages, and it should look like this, and it has this format, and maybe in orthopedic circles, spinal circles, whatever, Lee et al. Was a popular author, and so they know, oh, Lee et al. Yeah, this is associated with spinal surgery and produced works with titles similar to this, but it's all bullshit. It's in the sense of the answer that you've asked it, it's fully appropriate. It looks right, it tastes right, it sounds right, but it's not right because it's not actually information. It's just an association. So once you come to grips with that and realize, okay, I'm asking a system a question, it sounds human, it feels human, it has feedback, it writes really well. I mean, if it can do anything, it can write fantastically because it's learnt how to formulate sentences and the right combinations of letters and words that go together that produce beautiful flowing scripture-like text. And it will fool you in that harmonic text that it will generate, that it actually knows what it's talking about. But in fact, it doesn't actually know anything. If we get past that, then we've got something to work with. So unfortunately, I think it hit the market so quickly and got so popular so fast, and people were blown away, me included. Look what this can do. Oh my God. And then slowly you don't know how it works. You just see the end product and you think, oh, look, I put in a question and it spits out all this cool stuff. And it's kind of half right. And I feel smarter than I did yesterday. But slowly you discover, look, half of it's actually junk, or half of it's hallucinations, or what people call hallucinations. It's not a hallucination. It's just, it's the synthesis of things that it thinks it wants to, or the things that it thinks you want to see. You're expecting fact and truth, and it's just presenting something. Those hallucinations are bitterly disappointing for people looking for those finite factual details. And so suddenly the skepticism goes from, or the fascination and the wonder goes from here, and the skepticism just takes over. And then you're getting those people back to use the technology and recognize or accept that, hey, wait a minute, it can actually do some other stuff as well, is really hard. So it's certainly frustrating. I had this encounter earlier this week with some colleagues, as a quite dear colleagues who I quite appreciate and hold in high regard. And to see their absolute bitter refusal to acknowledge an AI-generated piece of text was a little bit frustrating, because I'll show you what the software I've created does and show you why it's a bit different. So I think if we can accept that ChatGPT, or these large language models, are very good at manipulating language. They can read, recognize, replicate, and generate answers in language form exquisitely. What's missing is the factual basis of actual knowledge, or in this case, literature and academia, to actually give that beautiful texture of language actual substance. So what have I got here? Let's just flick on screen sharing. Where's my screen sharing? Let's go here. So I'm not sure if anyone's thing. Is that working? It should be working. Can I just get some recognition that that's working? There we go.
Yeah, it's working. We see it.
Yep. So this is my website. It's just called The Literature. It's really dirt simple. I for money if it was like donating. And basically it's got a single compose a text, compose a question, enter what kind of literature analysis you would like out of this, and hit a button. So I've got a couple of test questions. Look, what have we got? What is the risk of re-rupture following ACL reconstruction with an LET? Haven't actually run this one for a while. And this will just give you an initial impression of what it does. Now, this is running what's called a 16K model. It can run up to 16,000 tokens, which is equivalent to around 12,000 words in one go. So what I'm doing is search PubMed. It goes in, uses keywords that it's identified in my question formulation, generated its own search stacks. Oh, that didn't work. Sometimes it doesn't work. Generates its own search syntax for PubMed, retrieves the abstract results from PubMed, from the database, manipulates those results, sends them back to ChatGPT with a series of instructions, and then ChatGPT comes back with a synthesis of those abstracts. And given the 16,000 tokens or the 1,000 words or so, it means we can analyze the abstract of between 20 and 30 articles in one fell swoop. And what this
May I
does
ask you,
is yeah.
You write down real time. That means that the algorithm just searches PubMed while we are looking at this screen. If any journal enters new papers, tomorrow the results could look differently.
Yeah, and because of the generative manner of the way these large language models work, which we'll get to in a minute, each analysis will have slightly different nuances. So the basic information, the basic statistics and findings, whatever that it's pulling out of those articles will be the same, but how it formulates its results on how it formulates its response, created a short abstract here, how this abstract reads and the nuances or the emphasis that it places on particular studies, on one study or another study or not, will differ between running this analysis now and running this analysis in 3 minutes time. The core of it will be the same, but it'll be slightly different. But just to show you, this is just a basic rundown. It's analyzed 23 articles. It's pulled 4 of them out as relevant, and it's integrated the results of those 4 articles into an abstract type, literature summary. And this is solid. There is no scope for hallucination. There's no scope for fake references or rubbish in this, because what we've done is we've provided a language synthesis model, some core information which it can then manipulate. So we're using the skills which we know it has, not the knowledge that we think it has. Rather, we're using the skills that we know it has, what it can do well, and we're augmenting that with the actual knowledge from a reliable source, and we're going straight to PubMed, and we're letting it do the hard work of reading through 20 abstracts and just pulling out the relevant things for our question, because it all comes back, and that's the thing, it's all very focused on the question that you actually ask it, as opposed to a typical PubMed search where you are, first of all, focused on simply finding the articles and using the keywords that you need to find the articles of interest, and not necessarily answering your question. You have to find the articles first and then answer your question. This does it all in one fell swoop. So this is what it spits out, and this is a relatively short one. Sometimes it's a little bit longer, sometimes it's a little bit shorter. It's one of the things I complain about with this system. Things like length of response are really hard to steer. They talk about the steerability of your answers. These are quite difficult, but this is a typical output. What I want to show you is how it actually does this. So I'm just going to go open up this. All right. Stop sharing. I'm just going to share a different screen. So basically what you've got is, I've got text input here. Oh God, this is awful. I don't know why this is just suddenly writing sideways. Let me just delete that, try again. So we've got, sorry. So we've got our, go away. We've got our, oh, this is awful. Sorry, I don't know why this is writing sideways like this, but we'll just have to live with it. We've got our input, and basically we go up to PubMed. And PubMed, so the input that we ask goes directly into PubMed. PubMed spits out, say, 20 articles. Those 20 articles come back and go into a request that goes to ChatGPT. ChatGPT takes those 20 articles plus a set of instructions. So in that drop-down menu, instructions, can't write, plus the articles plus the instruction that we give it, then generates our output. Now, what we can manipulate here is the input. We can regulate what the PubMed results are generated. These 20 articles are then pretty much what comes back from PubMed. We can't control that. And then we can control the instructions. And at every point along the way here, or at least on these 3 points, we can influence what this output is. And this is where it comes, where it gets interesting. If you ask a really biased question, and you put in a really, when you get into PubMed and you ask a really biased literature review, and you only want to see the good result from something, you ask a biased result of, surgical management of a spondylolisthesis, and do, good outcomes from a spondylolisthesis in PubMed, 20 articles, and then you give it the instruction, tell me how good surgical results of spondylolisthesis are, you're going to get an output. It looks like a very formal, abstract literature review type article, and it's going to tell you how the sun shines on surgical management of spondylolisthesis, and it's completely unbalanced, totally biased question, totally biased output, because you've asked a biased question. The skills in asking a good question, how to ask a good question, that's something that we learn at school. It's something that we learn at university. It's what those people who are in academia and do literature reviews for money or for fame get very good at doing. But the average Joe or the average person who asks a question isn't very good at asking good questions. So very interesting seeing how you can manipulate your output through asking poor questions by giving some interesting instructions. And I can say for my system, which I created, I've tried to balance all of this out, but this is all very programmer dependent. If you want to be, if you want to give everyone rubbish answers in the back end of your system, you can put in, just bullshit instructions, and greatly determine, or rather greatly influence, the output of your system. So I'm just going to show you this now. Let's stop talking. This is a little bit esoteric. Let's get into the nuts and bolts of this. So,
Ed, have you been aware of asking
yeah.
biased questions before you went into your project? Did you know this? Did you, before ChatGPT entered the scene, did you ask a lot of stupid questions on PubMed and noticed, oh, I'm probably asking the bad questions?
Now think about how you do a normal literature review. If you go into PubMed, or if you start with Google Scholar, you're not trying to answer your question already at the first instance of finding your articles. The first step of your literature review is finding any kind of relevant article that is somehow related to the field that you're looking at, and you start reading. And then you read another one, you end up with a wad of articles. And then you start filtering out which of those are relevant. And your question may change, or you may be influenced by the content of those articles, and your brain moves along. The way, or the trouble of how this works is because you're skipping all of this, skipping all of the steps of actually searching for articles and using keywords and finding particular specifics of articles in order to generate this literature list, which you'll then invest yourself in. You're jumping straight into the question, and the question can be a shitty question, and you'll get a result anyway, because it will find something to talk about. You've given it an input, it will find a way to formulate an answer. It became interesting, and I'll show you a second how I came over that. And I know you've played with it. The advanced search function on this, where I've given users the control back to actually play with the PubMed aspect directly, rather than letting ChatGPT run the PubMed aspect. And I'll show you how that goes in a second. So it's going to show you this. So this is going to be a little bit boring for people who aren't particularly technical, but I'm going to do my best to make it interesting. This is the gut. This is anyone who wants to steal my idea. Feel free to take lots of screenshots and just replicate this. This is the code of what my program does. This basically follows that scribbling that I just did. But basically, it takes an input, sends it to PubMed. PubMed gets the results back, sends it to GPT with an instruction, and gets your output. I'm just going to show you what those instructions actually are, and then we'll test run one of those instructions. And I'd like, if someone can think of just a regular language question, maybe throw it up in the chat box, that I can show you. I can run that search query as an example. But look, the first step of this is turning a regular search query into a syntax. So where was it here? Hang on. Hold on. It is here. So yeah. Hold on. Copy. Let's get rid of that. What can you see? Black screen. Super. Let me just go to the other screen. So where's my other screen? Where's my other screen? That would be this one. All right. So the Zoom menu is directly over my tabs. All right. So here, this is what we call the playground for ChatGPT. And in ChatGPT, you can test all of your stuff offline and see what kind of results it gives. So I don't know if you can read this, but I'll read it out loud. So you are a PubMed syntax expert who creates comprehensive, well-structured Boolean syntax strings in academic medical vocabulary from regular conversational language. Step 1, translate the specific query into English language. And that covers your multilingual basis. Then I've given it a structure which I named APICO or APICOD. And it looks in your search string to find patient's age, the population specifics, such as race, religion, profession, socioeconomic group, past medical history, previous medications, documented risk factors, the pathology or problem of interest, the intervention or exposure that you're interested in investigating, the comparison group for that exposure, the outcome, and if there's a leading diagnosis. So if you want to give the question a bit of a tip, it'll look for any diagnostic tips in there. It then deconstructs that into individual keywords. It then takes those keywords, it tries to find synonyms, uses acronyms, uses technical, if it takes non-medical terminology, turns it into proper medical terminology, creates Boolean strings with and, not, or functions, and then bundles that all up together. And I'll show you. So we've got a suggested question, or should we use the one that you wanted to use before?
Yeah, the one we used.
The one we used before. All right. So let's just here add message, paste. So this is a literature review about TDR versus ACDF regarding outcome complications. And let it be a little bit awkward because it's right over the top of the Zoom menu. And so this is what it does. It goes through, and this is what I love about this language model. It is really manipulating language and puts it all together. It's identified no specific age groups, notified pathology problems is TDR and ACDF, the intervention or exposure is TDR, the comparison is ACDF. You're looking for outcomes and complications, and there's no leading diagnosis. So it's identified these primary keywords. Synonyms, each keyword. So TDR is recognized that it means total disc replacement, artificial disc replacement, anterior cervical discectomy or fusion. Clinical outcomes, treatment outcomes, surgical outcomes, complications, adverse events, surgical complications, postoperative complications. It's generating all of this language, which is completely relevant for our search term, and bundles it all together. So it's taken from our question and has created a Boolean search string out of our question. And so that's this one example in this algorithm of how you're using AI not to answer a question, rather to play language games, to use its skill of manipulating language and using it to your advantage. If put in a normal question and get a Boolean string back. The next part of the program then takes this Boolean string, sends it to PubMed, gets the answers back. So let's take just an example. Right.
So you can say, in other words, takes the question and then with a standardized algorithm, he makes slices, and in the end, he creates a PubMed search, a Boolean question, and puts it into PubMed. And if
Exactly.
you don't write, if you don't write TDR and ACDF, if you misspell, if you do any question like TDR and ACL, like anterior cruciate ligament, then would be, he wouldn't notice.
No, it will notice. It will notice. It'll go, this doesn't make any sense. You didn't mean ACL, you meant ACDF.
Okay.
Because contextually, it doesn't make any difference. Because what it's doing, it's putting all of these, it's not understanding what you're writing, as looking for consistencies in pattern. And ACL does not fit in context. Either it may fit on a microscopic frame of view, but it's not fitting in context on microscopic in terms of your question. So it'll go through and it'll reformulate that and it'll give you an actual, correct it back to actually what it should be. Now, this is showing you how what kind of results we get from PubMed. This is just, what's it in here? Supplied ID parameter is empty. Sorry, that was the wrong thing. Let's take this, copy.
Yeah, and this happens while we wait and we see the blue ring doing the work in the background.
So this is all happening in the background whilst you're having a sip of your cup of coffee and waiting for this thing to finally get its job done. This is what's going on in the background. So it's sent off your questions, received a Boolean string back. The Boolean string then gets this back from PubMed. So this is an example of the, I think this is 20 results. This is just an example script which I pulled out for demonstration purposes. But this is an example of 20 extended abstracts. It's not the normal abstract that you get at PubMed. This is the extended abstract that sits in the PubMed database. And this is the data that it's actually using. And this in its entirety is what then gets sent back to GPT with an instruction and forms the core information basis of what it then manipulates and synthesizes. So this is, just to say, look, this is not rubbish. It's training. It's not the knowledge or the intrinsic knowledge of ChatGPT. We're not relying on that at all. Rather, we're giving it, spoon feeding it, extended abstracts directly from the PubMed database. And it's only 20 abstracts. I could sit down and I could read this in 10 minutes. That's not a big deal. But it is nice to just get this synthesized back in the palm of your hand. I've used this, for example, walking down a corridor with a colleague and they just spit out some statistic and it just doesn't sound right. And I'm like, no, that's just rubbish. Wait a minute. Check this on my phone, get an abstract answer, and then go, look, according to these 5 studies, you're full of crap. So yeah, that's what PubMed spits out. Now we go back, and I'll show you the instructions. And this is the last bit of the magic. I need to go stop sharing my screen and reshare my screen. There's my text document. Is this my text document? PubMed search, no backup. Hang on a second. I just need to open up the cut controller. Yeah, I'll show you this one. So screen 2, share. So this should be it. So there's this. Look, here are the instructions. So you can give ChatGPT, the typical ChatGPT on the computer, if you just jump on the website, it has a primary prompt, what's called a system prompt, and then it has the user prompt. And the system prompt is typically, you are a helpful assistant. And that's basically the prompt that is telling ChatGPT how to behave. When you use ChatGPT yourself, though, or you use the ChatGPT engine, you can define that prompt yourself. And you say, no, you're not a helpful assistant. Rather, where are we here? Yeah. So your name, got it here. Your name is the literature. You are to act as a leading senior specialist in your medical specialty. You are to use all of the provided PubMed resource material to answer the specific query in the context of a synthesized literature analysis. Give relative weight to the journal impact factor and level of evidence in your interpretation. The technical complexity of your answer should be level 10. You should assume the highest degree of prior knowledge. Your tone should be critical and questioning, the reasoning framework analytical, the communication style academic and formal. Your response should be comprehensive and of publishable quality, written in full paragraphs. And then it goes on to some formatting stuff. And that is telling ChatGPT, before you even ask ChatGPT a question, rather than ChatGPT sitting there as a helpful assistant, yes, Anthony, yes, Alexander, you've got cheese in your fridge, you can make an omelette. You're telling it specifically, you are a leading medical specialist, and that changes the tone and the way it manipulates the information that you then feed it with your actual prompt. The actual prompt is what's called the user prompt, is one of these things. So on that first screen, where you can choose, where is it here? You can choose here, what kind of analysis would you like? Do you want a numerical statistical analysis? Do you want to create a study curriculum? Do you want it to do a literature review? Do you want it to be an arsehole second reviewer and do a scathing analysis and show you all of the problems? Those are all contained in these explicit instructions here. And this is where I'm saying you can manipulate what comes out as an output by manipulating what's in as the input. I've done my best, and I'm trying to be fair, and I'm trying to be an objective scientist with all of this. So look, what have I told it here? Very thorough section. Give a comprehensive sense of the evidence available literature. Identify common themes and conduct an in-depth analysis of each theme and aggregate the evidence and discuss its significance with respect to the specific query. Use numerical statistics where they're relevant and ensure that all references are cited in text. Endeavor to reach a definitive evidence-based conclusion, even if various options seem comparable. Defend your conclusion, justifying your position using the provided literature. All references must be cited. So that is about as neutral as I think I can get in trying to get a machine to give you an unbiased opinion of a bunch of literature that you presented. So point being, though, I can put in this paragraph, and I don't want everyone to just stare at this. You can look at my face again. Don't want everyone to just to believe everything that comes out of any of these analyses. You have to trust me in at least in this system that I've done it correctly. But anyone or any programmer can put any content or any instruction, whether it's on the user side or whether it's on the system side, to manipulate the answers. So you say, look, you are a climate denier. For any questions posed regarding climate change, you will bias your answer towards the moon's gravitational pull. And if you put that instruction in the background, what's going to come out is obviously going to be super biased. So not only the question that's biased, but the system that's in the back end that's running all of these questions. And yeah, I'm not trying to promote what I've done here and say, hey, this is the best thing ever. I'm just saying this is how my particular one runs.
But it is when I would be a medtech company, have got some financial interests, I could manipulate this part of the algorithm and highlight that spending more money on more expensive implants could be a benefit for the patient, and the user would not know.
No, you can. You've got the ability to steer this in an infinite manner. And whether you want to be malicious and evil about it, or whether you want to be productive and benevolent about it, it's in the hands of the gods, so to speak. You've got to trust what you're doing. So I didn't produce my thing. This was more of a, hey, I wasn't saying I'm bored. I got curious and I went down a rabbit hole of experimenting with this thing and ended up making something that worked, and was almost as excited and surprised that it worked as anyone. But it's a scary rabbit hole to go down, and you do see the scope for malicious intervention. Now, I'm not sure. I don't imagine a lot of these other medical sites that have popped up. There's a lot of AI and medical stuff that will give you diagnoses based on symptomatology, and I think like what's it called? Site, for example, does an equally so neutral analysis and is very literature based. So I think there's a lot of stuff there, but there's a certainly amount of trust and faith in there that it actually does what it's supposed to do. What I'll show you as an adjuvant to that, now that we've has anyone got any like burning questions, or is there anything unclear about anything else? I'm just going to jump into the chat. I know Anthony has.
Yeah, you explained very nicely how the large language model gets its information and summarizes 20 articles.
Okay.
Dr. Tripati asked this. May I just show? I asked the same question to Site. You mentioned Site. I will just show you what Site is creating. So you can see here now the same question Dr. Oates asked his project, or rather literature review about TDR versus ACDF. And so this is a commercial product. You have to pay for this. And you can see here, it comes out with a literature review. It sounds from the language pretty nice and pretty neutral and unbiased. And you see, this is you can get here in the end. It's not it was the same Boolean string that Dr. Oates created, but you see here now the searches. And I can now chat with this program like on ChatGPT, and you can see here the literature, and I can come here or here to these papers, and I can jump in and go from reference to reference and show this. So this is a commercial product. But I don't understand.
Say, what have you actually got there as conclusion? Based on literature review, TDR is a safe and effective treatment, single liver degeneration, produce outcomes similar to ACDF, less than advised, quoted. TDR has superior outcomes, pain relief, functional improvement, blah, blah, blah. So I've done this, I've done the same. We prepared this earlier. I've done the same search using the literature. And
so now you have to share your screen back.
Yeah, I will.
And it's pretty nice that everybody who uses these programs can now create in a good language. Like me, I'm not native English. Dr. Oates is native English from Australia, but me, I have some problems with English language. Now with these systems, I can create beautiful texts. And I think, what is your impression? Does it sound like a native speaker?
It's flawless. It truly is. And there's a lot of, you can tweak the language as well. I didn't want to get into that because that's more the mechanical function of how these work, but the language is called a temperature setting, and you can set the temperature from 0 to 2. Above 1, it turns into sort of Salvador Dali type text. It's uninterpretably abstract, and at the other end, it's something like a 3-year-old writes. It's just simple words put into a sentence without anything interesting. It's very mechanical, and in between there's a spectrum. So I've actually, for the literature, I've actually got the temperature set at 0.4. So it's not particularly flamboyant. It's not particularly diverse in its vocabulary. It's not trying to make long and complex flowing sentences. It's got a degree of nuance to it, but it's not going overboard. It's more just that academic, mechanical type of language, which we all know and love. But no, look, I'm with you. I'm a native English speaker living in Germany, and I have the honor of generating insurance reports and disability claims and massive long compensation claims and stuff. And that has been the bane of my work for a good 10 years. Now it's just a piece of cake. I can dictate stuff. I can do an entire compensation claim in English, and I've got a couple of macros set up on my computer at work, and just run them through. It translates it all into German, makes it sound better than a native German for half of the stuff. It's an absolute lifesaver in that respect. But look, just based on that same question you posed earlier, write a literature review about TDR versus ACDF. Similar story. Selected 19 articles, pulled a couple of those out. Hasn't actually given me a reference list for whatever reason. It's got references here, so you can click through to PubMed and actually get the references directly. But yeah, reached the same conclusion. Both CDR and ACDF are effective surgical options for treatment of cervical degeneration disc disease. There's several advantages, disadvantages, important to consider patient-specific factors. Usual disclaimer, but it's a very similar. So obviously a bit of variability. It depends on which articles it's pulled out to analyze. And I actually saw that just here, and that's an excellent segue to the next thing I just wanted to talk about. Now, where did the chat window go? So here, who asked that question? There was a question here. Treva T to everyone. Dr. Oates, how does your LMM model select the right 20 articles to summarize? It selects the top 20. If it had an infinite word count, so basically, as I mentioned before, it's got a token limit of 16,000 tokens, which means about 12,000 words, and it will just take the top 12,000 words from PubMed, which I've manipulated the PubMed results so that it gives, rather than the most recent, which often you can just get some absolute rubbish things if you sort the results by most recent. Rather, I've got it sorting by most, which is using the intrinsic PubMed search engine to then filter or sub-filter your results and give a sort based on relevancy, which they've spent a lot of time developing. But nonetheless, you're kind of hoping that those top 20 results, or the most relevant results, are actually the ones that are going to answer your question. And that's a little bit, you've handed over the reins of the literature search bit. Equally, the requested feature, when I first made this thing, I sort of gave it to a friend and had them play around with it, and they all gave it back to me and went, no, that's way too complicated. You got to make it more simple. The simple answer is ask a simple question, get an answer, and the answer is 75% good. But for those people who are pedantic and want more control, and you go, look, I don't want to hand over the reins of which 20 papers is it actually using. You want to use those 20 papers yourself. I made, where is this? Literature, advanced search. I don't want to spend too long going on this, but here you've got the opportunity, rather than letting you take your normally worded question, create a Boolean string, you've got the opportunity here to create your own Boolean string. So what was your write a literature review? So we want to, yeah. I'm going to have to quickly shift myself here. So look, let's go TDR as a keyword, add to keyword search. What else was in there? ACDF with an and function. Add to see what keyword search. What did you want to outcome complications? So complications. Okay, and now you've created, this is a dirt simple Boolean string search that you created yourself, but you can go and you can preview the search results and see if you're actually getting, we've got 27 search results with TDR and ACDF and complications. You can manually go through here and you go, I need to add an extra keyword. I need to remove a keyword. I need to put some not functions in there. Or, oh, this particular one, well, this is a really good study. You can grab the PubMed ID but it gives you the opportunity to fine tune and modify your search to give you the answers, or give the search results that you find appropriate for your question. And you can then run that. So execute the PubMed search, and it'll dump all of those PubMed IDs from what you just searched. Plus, if you thought one was particularly useful, or if there's a landmark study which you want to include, it wasn't actually in those results, but you want to include some landmark study, you can just paste an extra PubMed ID into this this output list, and it'll include it. Then you've got the freedom of asking a question that may not be related to the PubMed search at all. So previously we had to ask a question that included keywords that were going to be relevant to create a PubMed search string. Now you can ask a, how long is a piece of string question here? What is the risk of re-rupture following ACL injury? Let's just ask, what is the risk of complication? Complication following TDR, versus ACL. Yeah, and look, I haven't even spelled it properly. Let's see what it does with that. So we can obviously restrict it to patient types, restrict it to year ranges or whatever. Let's just not muck around with that. Normal instruction and send it on its way. So this is now skipping the step of doing a syntax conversion. It's using our already retrieved PubMed results. And so we've been able to specify specifically which articles it will analyze. And the question that we can ask can be divorced from the actual PubMed search. So it gives the user that flexibility to be a little bit more definitive and a little bit more control. And yeah, I'm not sure if this is a particularly good question or a particularly good search. I didn't really pay much attention, but it did it.
Yeah, it's the same result. TDR is safe and effective alternative to JCDF. Yeah, it looks like good. And there's a question: the PubMed and the numbers of citations. PubMed doesn't know how much a paper was cited, doesn't it?
No.
So PubMed doesn't know what is a landmark paper. PubMed doesn't know whether a paper was cited 1,000 times or 0 times.
No. And was that cite? We were talking about that before. Yeah. Was that cite that's part of this? Yeah. So PubMed is a library. It's not been involved in the generation of impact factors. It's not involved in H indexes. It's not. It doesn't have anything to do with that. It's completely divorced from these algorithms and metric systems. So PubMed's basically just the library. There are other catalogs which have got proprietary information, such as the site catalog. Then you've got Google Scholar. You've got what's it?
Yeah, I just
Research.
wanted. Yeah, I just ResearchGate. Yeah, I just wanted to show Dr. Birchak. This is a commercial project. If you look for an author, for example, like this, you will find his publications, and you can sort them by number of citations. So this is from Dr. Bach, Professor Bach, and you can see here now one of his most cited papers is these with Dr. Uribe, highly ranked papers. You can even look who cited your work, and you can visualize this like this. This is a nice tool, and you can find here how many citations have been there, and how and what kind of papers cited your research? For example, this paper by my colleague was cited by Tao, by Lyons, and Elder. You know Ben Elder. He was here too. He cited two years later this work, and it's happening on site, but you have to pay for this information. So PubMed is really only a library. And is this why you have chosen this image from the literature, the library?
Yeah, well, that, and it was just a cool image. Don't overthink it, Alex. It's I'm a full-time trauma surgeon who plays with this stuff at midnight, and
yeah,
if
and
an image looks good, yeah.
And may I ask you one question, because David Bennett is mentioning this in the chat box. You have
What's David
you
online?
have costs.
Hello, David.
Yeah, you have costs with your project, because AI is not for free. You always mentioned the term token. It takes 12,000 tokens, so on. Can you give us an impression how much is a token in dollars?
1,000 tokens is 0.04 cents. That's the input token cost. The output token cost is a little bit more. I think it's like 0.06 cents for 1,000 tokens output, which means if I'm feeding the algorithm the absolute maximum amount of text volume from the PubMed results to get as many results as possible included, so that it gets the best bang for the search, so to speak. So I'm usually feeding it around between 12 and 13,000 tokens on the way in, and usually get around 800 tokens on the way out, so around 600 word answers. So each search costs around 5 cents. That's
5 cents.
Not much. It's not much. But yeah.
They don't speak much about the costs of AI. They always say, "Oh, it's a fantastic." When did you notice that the costs are present, and they can be a problem for anybody who is starting to think to go into AI and ChatGPT?
I had a moment. I had a rather heavy hitter on Twitter write a thread on this. He's got 300,000-400,000 followers or something, and I had a surge of usage over 3 or 4 days due to his post, and that alone cost around $350.
Yeah, so it was a nice advertisement, but with costs in the long run.
Yeah, it was valuable. Like, I got a lot of feedback. A lot of people sent me messages. I got a lot of feedback about what was good and what was bad, and actually translated into actual tangible changes, which I instituted on the site and changed a lot of stuff very fundamentally to make it better. But it was a $350 test. And look, the $350, I'm not going to lose sleep about that. And I fund me, and I put this buy me a coffee thing on there. And I think I figured out at some point, I think between 0.2% and 0.4% of visitors will actually take a moment to put a $5 tip in the coffee jar, so to speak. And that just kept me cost neutral. And I think, and David Bennett, if he's online and listening, he's been a major supporter, and he deserves a round of applause for the amount of money he's thrown at this project to keep it neutral. So thanks, David. But I've actually had to look at monetizing it. It's got daily costs of between $10 and $20 a day, which, yeah, I can't keep up. I think it's a cool project. I think it's a great idea. I'm really excited by what it does and how it does it. The feedback's died away a little bit. I'm not sure if people are as excited about it as I was, and the user numbers aren't growing. It's sort of just bubbling along and simmering. If there's interest there, I'll keep kicking the tin can down the road a little bit and supporting it. Or if we have to monetize it, I'll have to monetize it. It's just silly burning money for no reason. Yeah, we'll see.
We will
It's a
support
bit
you.
difficult. Like we're talking about the internet. You know, the internet expects everything for free, and I'm included. I torrent movies, I download software, and I expect everything on the internet that I touch to be free. And I think a lot of people have that mindset. Getting people to pay for a service that doesn't have a tangible value is very difficult.
Yeah. And may I ask you some last questions? You didn't start informatics. You're not a programmer. Can you write a single line of HTML or PHP code, or does ChatGPT do everything for you?
I want to say yes, I'm a talented coder. No, I'm absolutely dreadful. ChatGPT has been instrumental, I think is probably the word, in creating the code that runs this. I do have an IT guy. I've got another website. I run an osteosynthesis website, and I've got an IT guy who runs or has built that for me and maintains that. And I've thrown him a couple of desperate pleas of, can you fix this and can you make this run? Which I would have no idea how I would do that without him. But stuff like the PHP front ends, running those API controllers, doing the API calls and stuff, I know my way around them now. I can understand what they're all doing. I know the syntax when I see it, and I know when there's a problem, but just writing it, shooting from the hip and actually writing a page of code, I wouldn't have a clue.
Yeah,
and again,
but
I think that's one of these.
With this saying, would you agree when I say everybody can do this project on his own? Can everybody do a similar project within 2 weeks or 2 months? What do you think? ChatGPT is available since a couple of months.
I think once you understand what it does, I think the biggest hurdle is this understanding the principles of how the system works and what it's capable of, and what all of these different prompts are. What are the system prompts? What are the user prompts? What does a change in temperature do? I often say getting this thing to work is like herding cats. It's really, really difficult to constrain this senseless, illogical system and get it to create a sensible, logical output. It's not as simple as you think. And understanding how that works, that's the thing that kills hours of contemplation and thinking and trying and testing and redoing. The actual nuts and bolts of creating the code to do it is really easy. Like I showed you that code before. That's the entire, there's no other code. That's it. And that's all that's required to run it. So from that point of view, and given that ChatGPT is actually a half decent coder, you can create a lot of stuff that was previously completely out of people's hands and were in the hands of only coders. So yes, it's possible. Yes, you can quickly create a site that has a functionality. The knowledge of how to use it and manipulate it takes some brain time. That really does take a bit of sitting down and figuring out, and sleeping on it and figuring it out. But it's absolutely doable.
Yeah, it is amazing. Thank you very much, Ed. I don't have good closing words, but I think that take some, please take this personally. You have to be some kind of genius to go to this. I think you're the only orthopedic surgeon I know who is able to have an idea and just go there, sit down, and try it. It's nice that you mentioned the playground zone on ChatGPT. Playground is so important. Gamification is such a wonderful tool to get smarter, to learn. And I think we all learned a lot from you today. And I think is AI a threat or an opportunity? What is are you optimistic, or did you change your mind and think, oh, pretty dangerous stuff for what I'm looking at?
I think it will relativize itself, because I got really invested with this idea and had to figure out what it can do and how it does it. I've come to a relatively quick conclusion. We're talking months. I think I started this in maybe April, May. So from April, May till now, figured out the nuts and bolts. And over that time, finally figured out what this technology does and how it works. That most people are still in their heads back at where I was in May, April. That's going to take the majority of people a lot of time to figure out what this can do. And by the time they figure out what it can do, the goalposts would have moved and the next generation of AI has moved on. At the end of the day, though, it's a pattern recognition system which manipulates language, but it's dumb. And I think the stepping stone is, I don't think there's a small stepping stone to take it from a language manipulation and synthesis system and turn it into a sentient, knowledgeable system which actually stores fact, because that's going to require a quantum leap of technical and computing capability to facilitate that. Certainly possible. I think that's a long way away. Until then, we've got very good language manipulation tools which can serve things like generating literature reviews, generating summaries, generating documents, doing language translation, creating content. Is it dangerous? The thing is dangerous if it's going to be abused. And I think that's, there's always a scope. There's a freely available, basically free to use tool that is incredibly capable. And if you manipulate it, you can do anything with it. You can create a lot of fake stuff, a lot of manipulative stuff, a lot of damaging stuff. That's going to be near impossible to control. But as with all nasty, malicious things, it's all person driven. I don't think a malicious and malevolent person,
You're not
to be malicious and malevolent at a new level.
But I think when they raise the costs for the tokens to a level you cannot afford, then all these private pioneering projects will die, I guess, and then the systems can go over to the rich companies, to the rich like Elsevier or team. They have the money. They may not control this part of literature analysis. Dr. Oates, thank you very much. I still
David's
believe
just asked a question here. Sorry, David's just, could insurance use this kind of thing to deny claims? David, my answer to that is doctors can use this to create claims. So all of you didn't include in your clinical history or examination findings that it was bone on bone, or you didn't include the range of motion, limiting it to a functional arc of 90 degrees. it can include all of that and will reduce the number of negative claims or refused claims. So I think the sword has two sides.
Yeah, I think we will see a battle in the future. Yeah, and it depends on where you are on which side of the force.
Yeah,
I still believe I met the smartest orthopedic surgeon of Germany in person last year in Zurich. Thank you very much, Edward. This was awesome, and you will find this video on YouTube soon. And you will find the next announcement on Twitter for the upcoming session next week. Thank you very much. It's late. It's 1 o'clock in the morning now in Germany. Thank you for taking the time to this crazy time.
no worries.
Vielen Dank. Danke dir. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys, and thanks for everyone for tuning in.
And donate some coffee, please.
Yes, and put some money in the coin jar.